The following is an audio podcast from the Korea Society, celebrating more than a half-century of promoting awareness, understanding, and cooperation between the people of the United States and Korea. For more information on our programs, please visit our website at www.koreasociety.org.
Welcome to this rapid reaction report by the Korea Society. Taking a major step in its missile program, North Korea on July 4th test launched a reported intercontinental ballistic missile, which some experts believe has the range to reach Alaska or the Pacific Northwest of the United States. This test is the first of its kind by North Korea, and it has triggered an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council and a call by Washington, D.C. for united global action. To help us decipher the immediate impact, we turn to Ambassador Thomas Hubbard, Chairman of the Korea Society and former United States Ambassador to the Republic of Korea, and to Thomas Byrne, President of the Korea Society and formerly with Moody's. Ambassador Hubbard, your thoughts on the politics and immediate impact of this test?
Well, this is a disturbing development. The test does appear to represent a dramatic new step towards a North Korea that is capable of striking the United States with an atomic weapon. It's just a step. It seems to be, the missile does seem to have the range of reaching Alaska. I'm not sure about the Pacific Northwest, but it's not clear yet, whether it has the capability of re-entering the atmosphere after flying that far without burning up. Whether they have an actual weapon that could be mounted on the missile that it would be capable of carrying. So they're not quite there yet to that point where we will be particularly worried. But it is an important next step and a very disturbing one.
Have we passed a red line, Ambassador Hubbard, that causes Washington to respond in crisis mode?
My sense is that the Trump administration has stopped short of drawing specific red lines. Trump at one point in one of his tweets said North Korea is trying to develop a missile capable of reaching the United States. They'll never get there. But in fact, they do seem to be getting closer to that point. I think the real turning point will be when we believe they do have a weapon, a warhead capable of mounting on a missile and entering the United States. I'm not sure they're there yet.
What are effective responses that Washington can take right now?
Well, we're doing the usual. We are consulting with our closest allies, Japan and Korea. We are discussing the issue with China. We would like China to put more pressure on the North. We have proclaimed that we are going to expand sanctions and increase pressure, and I believe there's a UN Security Council meeting today to consider the matter. So these are all efforts of increasing the pressure on North Korea. Last week, when President Moon was in Washington, he and President Trump apparently agreed that our approach should be a combination of pressure and of a willingness to enter into some kind of negotiation at the appropriate time. Right now, I think the appropriate first response is pressure, but that at some point we do need to take a hard look at what kind of negotiations we might be prepared to enter, and what negotiations the North Koreans might be prepared to enter, which would lead to a reduction of this threat.
Thank you, Ambassador Hubbard. President Byrne, do you have thoughts on the immediate impact on the markets?
Well, the immediate impact is that the markets were stirred but not shaken. There's no panic, but there's concern. We saw this in the $1 market. We saw it in the COPSI, and where both dropped by small amounts. The yen, which is considered a safe haven, actually rose on Tuesday. Now that is, I think, ironic because North Korean missile technology already threatens Japanese cities. So if geopolitical risks rise in the region, on the peninsula rather, I think they rise in the region as a whole. Looking more closely at the cost of insuring South Korean sovereign debt, the so-called credit default swaps, there was a jump up 6 basis points to 58 after North Korea's ICBM test on early in the morning our time, July 4th. That's a notable jump in such a short period of time. However, it is a much more mild reaction to what has happened in the past on previous North Korean provocations. When North Korea shelled Yeonpyeong-do Island in November 2010, the CDS spreads jumped 22 basis points. Even greater than that, the financial risks have been overshadowed any geopolitical risks so far. Hopefully that'll remain the case. As I said before, South Korean government CDS spreads were at 58 basis points level, and they had reached a record of 699 basis points in October 2008 during the global financial crisis, and daily fluctuations were more than 20 basis points back then. So the markets are stirred but not shaken. One other comment I wanted to make is that even though the markets have been affected somewhat in South Korea, meaning the foreign exchange markets, the stock markets, and even the government bond market, it is ironic that China's economic retaliation against South Korea's deployment of a THAAD defensive missile system could have greater economic effect, at least foreseeable economic effect right now, on the South Korean economy than North Korea's saber rattling. President Moon Jae-in, in his speech at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in D.C. last Friday, noted that such actions by China has caused $8 billion in damage to the South Korean economy, a lot more than anything yet we've seen from North Korea.
Thank you, Tom. And as we head into the G20 summit, do you expect this to be a major point for discussion? Either Tom.
Yeah, of course, one of the North Korean situations will be very much on President Trump's mind as he meets with a range of leaders in Europe this week, including Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, the Prime Minister of Japan, President Moon of Korea, and Putin. So, the North Koreans did this just at a time when it could perhaps attract maximum attention. The North Koreans themselves have said that they saw this as a 4th of July present for the United States. The ICBM test followed right after the bilateral meeting between Moon Jae-in and President Trump here, and just before the series of multilateral meetings that are going to take place in Europe. So if the North Koreans wanted to capture the world's attention, they have done so. I think the initial response around the world will be condemnation and further efforts to press the North Korean regime into restraining its actions.
Thank you. Ambassador Thomas Hubbard, thank you. President Thomas Byrne, thank you. And special thanks to our producer, Peter Stuehmke. I'm Stephen Noerper of the Korea Society, and this has been a Rapid Reaction Report.
The opinions expressed in the preceding program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Korea Society, its staff, management, or sponsors. Thank you for listening to this Korea Society podcast. If you enjoyed it, please consider becoming a member. Visit www.koreasociety.org for information about memberships and to learn more about all the programs available at the Korea Society.